They say a mother's love forgives everything, but no one ever tells you what happens when that love is betrayed. When my phone buzzed that evening, I was standing by the kitchen counter, brushing a bit of flour off my apron. I had just slid a peach cobbler into the oven, the kind my daughter always said tasted like Sunday mornings. I thought it was Jasmine texting me to remind me what time to come for dinner. But when I looked down and saw the name on the screen, my heart dropped so hard it felt like it shook the floor beneath me. It was my lawyer, Mr. Franklin. The message said, "Call me immediately. It is about your daughter." I stopped breathing for a second. The room felt smaller, the air thicker. The TV in the background faded into silence. The sweet smell of sugar from the oven turned sour in my stomach. I just stood there, phone in hand, feeling that strange, heavy warning that something was coming. When I finally found my voice, I called him back. He answered on the first ring. "Mrs. Harris," he said, his tone soft, careful. "It's about Jasmine, ma'am. It's something you'll want to see for yourself." My throat tightened. "What do you mean, something about my daughter? Is she hurt?" "No, she's fine," he said quickly, "physically, at least. But I'd rather not discuss this on the phone. Please come by my office first thing in the morning. It's important." I felt my knees weaken, so I leaned against the counter for support. "Just tell me what's going on," I whispered. He sighed deep and tired. "Mrs. Harris, it's a legal matter, and I believe your name is involved. I promise I'll explain everything when I see you." The call ended, leaving only the faint click of the line disconnecting. The quiet that followed was heavy. I could hear the clock ticking above the stove, steady as a heartbeat I no longer trusted. That night changed everything, though at the time I did not even understand what I was losing. Before I tell you what came next, you need to know who I am. My name is Gloria Harris, 57 years old, born and raised right here in Atlanta, Georgia. I have lived in the same brick house for 32 years. My husband, God rest him, passed on 12 years ago, and since then, it has just been me and Jasmine, my only child, my pride and peace. People say I have a soft heart and a sharp memory. Maybe that is true. I have always believed in doing right, paying my bills on time, keeping my faith, and loving my child no matter what. Maybe that no matter what was my mistake. If you are listening to this, please do not go anywhere. Like, subscribe, and share this story. Leave a comment too, because what I am about to tell you might sound like something from a movie, but it is real. After the call, I could not sit still. I walked through my kitchen like a restless spirit, my hands fidgeting with anything they could touch. The cobbler timer went off, but I did not move to check it. My mind kept circling that message. "It is about your daughter." I tried to call Jasmine, but it rang until it went to voicemail. I set the phone down, staring at the wall. My reflection in the microwave looked like a stranger's, eyes wide, lips trembling. I told myself I was being dramatic. Maybe it was something simple. Maybe Jasmine had been in a fender bender, or there was an issue with her business. But deep down, I knew this was different. I looked over at the picture on my mantel, Jasmine at her wedding, standing in front of that white gazebo with sunlight catching her hair. She looked so happy, so full of life. Back then, she was the girl who called me 3 times a day just to tell me about her students, her garden, or that new recipe she was trying. Lately, though, her calls had become shorter, colder. And then I remembered something. Just 2 weeks earlier, she had stopped by with her husband, Darren. They brought me takeout from that little barbecue spot off Peachtree. We ate together in the living room, laughing about old memories. Then, out of nowhere, Jasmine had said, "Mama, you really should let me help with your papers. You know, the house stuff, the insurance, just in case something happens." At the time, I thought it was sweet. Thought she was finally growing into the kind of woman her daddy would have been proud of. But now, sitting there in the quiet, those words came back to me with a sting. Just in case something happens. What could she have meant by that? I pushed the thought away and tried to focus on my breathing. I pulled the cobbler out of the oven, but my hands were shaking so badly that I nearly dropped it. The golden crust cracked down the middle. The sweet smell filled the kitchen, but I could not taste or smell any comfort in it anymore. That night, I left it on the counter to cool, untouched. Sleep did not come easy. I lay awake listening to the hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the house settling. Every sound felt louder than usual, every shadow longer. When dawn finally came, the world outside looked gray and washed out. I dressed slowly, buttoning my coat with trembling fingers. My old wedding ring, just a simple gold band, felt heavier that morning. The drive to Mr. Franklin's office felt like moving through fog. Atlanta traffic crawled, giving my thoughts too much room to wander. I tried to pray, but the words tangled somewhere between fear and disbelief. When I arrived, his secretary gave me a look I will never forget. Sympathy, pity, something soft and sorrowful in her eyes. Mr. Franklin came out right away, holding a folder in his hand. "Mrs. Harris, please, come in." I sat across from him at that old wooden desk, the same one where I had signed my husband's will. Years ago. My palms were damp. He took a deep breath. "Mrs. Harris, I will not waste your time. A transfer document for your home was filed last week. It appears to have your signature on it." I frowned, confused. "My home? You mean this house? The one on Juniper Street?" He nodded slowly. "Yes, ma'am, and the transfer is in your daughter's name." I stared at him. For a moment, I thought he must be mistaken. "That cannot be right," I said. "I have not signed anything. I would never." He turned the folder toward me and pointed to a page. There it was, my name, in neat cursive, my signature. But I had not touched a pen for any legal matter in months. My voice shook. "Who did this?" He looked down, then back up at me. "Mrs. Harris, I believe your daughter and her husband filed these forms. I think someone forged your authorization." The room tilted. The edges of his words blurred together. My heart pounded so hard that I could feel it in my throat. "No," I said softly. "Not Jasmine. She would not do that to me." He sighed, his voice gentle. "I wish I could tell you otherwise, but everything matches her involvement." I stared at the paper again, at the familiar loops of my name. It looked just like mine, but colder, emptier. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the hum of the ceiling fan. Finally, he said, "We will handle this carefully. Please do not confront her yet. Let me start the process to protect your assets." I nodded, but I was not really listening anymore. My mind was already somewhere else, back in my kitchen, staring at that untouched cobbler. By the time I left his office, the gray morning had turned into steady rain. I sat in my car for what felt like hours, watching droplets run down the windshield, trying to make sense of how a daughter could turn her mother's love into a weapon. When I finally drove home, the city felt unfamiliar, like every street was holding its breath. And when I walked into my kitchen, that cobbler was still there on the counter, cold and untouched. I could not even look at it. The sweetness had turned bitter in my mouth. That was the day I learned that even a mother's heart can break without a sound. And though I did not know it then, this was only the beginning. That morning, The house felt like a stranger's. The light that used to spill through my kitchen windows felt cold, pale, unfriendly. I made myself a cup of coffee, but it tasted like dust. The papers from Mr. Franklin's office still lay on the kitchen table, where I had dropped them the night before. The inked names staring back at me like ghosts I didn't invite. I sat there, hands trembling just a little, whispering, "No, not Jasmine. Somebody's mixed up in this." You see, the day before all this mess, I had been getting ready for dinner at Jasmine's house. She had called me that morning, cheerful as can be, saying, "Mama, come early this time. I made something special just for you." Her voice was sugar sweet, just the way she used to sound back when she wanted to make me proud or make me forget something. That afternoon, my kitchen smelled like home. Vanilla candles on the counter, a peach cobbler cooling by the stove. I hummed an old Gladys Knight song while I ironed my best green dress, the one I always wore when I wanted to feel decent but lovely. For a moment, I felt happy, like things were still simple, like my daughter was still that same little girl who used to twirl in my kitchen while I cooked Sunday dinner. But something deep down felt off. Jasmine had changed since marrying Darren. At first, I thought it was just part of growing up, but lately, she had this edge in her tone. Always distracted, always watching her words. One Sunday after church, she came by late for dinner, new purse on her arm, attitude to match. When I asked where it came from, she just laughed, saying, "Mama, you worry too much. Darren's handling things now." I let it go. I didn't want to be that mama who couldn't let her daughter breathe. But her smile that day had been too quick. Her eyes too shiny, like she was hiding something just out of my reach. The evening of that dinner, I packed my cobbler, covered it in a clean towel, and drove out as the sun dipped low over Atlanta. The sky was streaked pink and gold, and for a little while, I convinced myself everything would be all right. Jasmine's neighborhood was one of those polished suburbs, identical brick homes, manicured lawns, not a leaf out of place. When I pulled into her driveway, the porch light was already glowing, warm and golden. Before I could knock, the door opened. "Mama," she said, wrapping her arms around me. She smelled like coconut oil and some expensive perfume I didn't recognize. "You look so pretty. That dress really is your color." I hugged her back, smiling through the unease. "Thank you, baby. You know I always try to look decent for you." Inside, everything gleamed. Candles lit, jazz humming low, a roast cooling on the counter. Darren stood by the table pouring wine into glasses. "Evening, Mrs. Harris," he said with that same tight, polite smile. Jasmine wanted tonight to be special. "Evening, Darren," I replied. "Smells real good in here." Dinner started off easy. We talked about her job, her friends, some neighbor's new baby. I laughed when I could, nodded when I couldn't. But something about the air felt heavy, like the walls were listening. At one point, I saw Darren glance at Jasmine, quick, quiet, like a reminder. She looked away fast, pretending to check the oven. Then, just as I reached for my glass, Jasmine spoke. "Mama," she said lightly, "I was thinking, maybe we should start doing these dinners every Sunday again, like we used to." I smiled. "I'd love that." She nodded too fast. "Good. And I've been meaning to help you organize your documents. You always say you hate paperwork. I can come by this weekend, look at the house deed just to make sure everything's safe." I froze, fork halfway to my mouth. She said it so soft, so casual, like it was nothing. But I felt it, a tiny flicker of warning deep in my chest. "That's kind of you, baby," I said slowly. "But I got it handled." Darn chimed in before she could reply. Mrs. Harris, we just want to make sure things are secure, you know. Older folks get targeted all the time these days. I looked at him. Older folks like me? He laughed. Didn't mean it like that. Jasmine touched his hand. Darn, please. Her voice was too sweet, too rehearsed. I sat back, studying them both. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes, and that uneasy chill ran down my spine again. Dinner rolled on with polite laughter, but something in me had gone quiet. When I finally stood to leave, Jasmine hugged me tighter than usual. Her voice trembled against my ear. Mama, you trust me, right? I pulled back, surprised. Of course, baby. Why would you ask me that? She just smiled, but her eyes looked like they were carrying too much. Just wondering, she said softly. I drove home under a full moon. The streets were still, the world peaceful, but inside, my thoughts kept circling. Why would she ask me that? What's going on? When I got home, I set the cobbler dish in the sink and stared out the kitchen window. The night air was thick, humming with crickets. I told myself, she's my daughter. She loves me. But love doesn't stop the truth from knocking on your door. The next morning, that text from Mr. Franklin came and everything changed now. Sitting in my quiet kitchen, I could still see her face that night. That smile, those tired eyes, the way she said, Mama, you trust me, right? Like she was already begging for forgiveness she hadn't yet earned. I dumped my cold coffee down the sink, staring at my reflection in the glass. Somewhere between those candlelit dinners and forged signatures, I had lost the little girl who used to fall asleep on my lap. Outside, the wind began to rise, brushing against the windows like fingers. Somewhere out there, my daughter was building her own storm and I was about to walk straight into it. For days after that message, I moved like a ghost through my own house. The air felt thick, like it was holding secrets. The old clock in the living room ticked like a heartbeat I didn't trust, steady, accusing, alive when everything else in me felt still. Atlanta storms always came fast. You could watch the sky turn from blue to black in a blink. That afternoon, thunder rolled low over the neighborhood, and I remember thinking it was warning enough. But the real storm was pulling into my driveway. Jasmine's little silver car, her daddy's old one, slid in with the same reckless confidence she'd always had. She came running up with her purse slung tight, and that forced smile stretched thin. I stood at the window, the weight of that forged letter still heavy in my hand. The paper was cold, slick, and wrong like betrayal given shape. I didn't move when she called, Mama. I just said, come on in, baby. Her eyes flicked around the house like she was checking for ghosts. She always said this place felt too still without company, but she was the one who made it that way. She started with small talk, the kind that trembles under its own weight. Been rainin' all week. She said, your knee still bothering you? A little. The silence between us was a living thing, heavy as the storm pressing on the roof. Finally, I laid the letter on the table between us. You recognize that? She blinked. That's from the lawyer's office, right? Sure is. I leaned forward, my voice soft but sharp. You know, I used to think I could trust the things you helped me with, signing checks, sorting mail. Back when I thought I was teaching you responsibility, not betrayal. The color drained from her face. Mama, I didn't. Don't lie, Jasmine. The handwriting's yours. Even that little heart your eyes with gave you away. Her mouth opened, then closed again. Tears threatened, but she swallowed them back with pride. I just needed help, Mama. You weren't listening. The bills, There it is again, I said, cutting her off. Bills. Always the excuse. You think forgery's how grown folks ask for help. She stood up, voice trembling with anger she didn't know how to aim. You don't understand. You've never been broke. I laughed, bitter and tired. Child, I've been broke in more ways than you can count. Broken trust, broken heart, broken silence. But I never stole to fix it. She turned away, muttering something about me not forgiving her. That's when I felt something shift inside me, something small but solid. I wasn't broken anymore. I was just beginning. I took a breath, the kind that steadies you before the fall. I'd lost friends, time, even love before. But this was blood. And blood doesn't just hurt, it burns. When she finally left, I sat down at that table, staring at the clock on the wall. The ticking sounded softer now, almost like it was waiting, somewhere deep in the house. Thunder cracked again, but I wasn't scared of the sound anymore. I picked up that letter, smoothed it flat, and whispered to the empty room, "She's about to learn who her mama really is." The rain started just then, drumming steady against the window pane. Somewhere in that rhythm, beneath the ticking clock, I heard something else rising, a quiet fire inside me that wasn't going out this time. The old clock in the living room kept ticking, steady as judgment. That clock had been a witness to too many lies. Tonight, it sounded more like a verdict. Every second it struck, I felt the truth settle deeper into my bones. My own daughter had tried to take what I'd worked a lifetime to build. I sat at the kitchen table long after midnight, the lamp throwing a weak circle of gold across the cluttered surface. The coffee had gone cold hours ago, the smell bitter and stale. My eyes burned, but I didn't close them. I wasn't about to give sleep the satisfaction of softening me. The rain outside had quieted to a whisper against the windows, a soft tap that matched the ticking clock. I washed the coffee cup, dried it slow, and realized I wasn't trembling anymore. The bitterness had settled into something colder, cleaner, purpose. When the first pale light crept through my curtains, I felt a strange calm. Atlanta mornings always start gentle. Dew on the porch rail, birds chattering like nothing in the world's gone wrong. But I knew better. By noon, the heat would come, thick and merciless. That's how truth works, too. It starts quiet, then burns its way out. I stared out at that light for a long time, thinking about Jasmine, how she used to chase sunbeams on this very floor, giggling when they touched her face. I used to think she was reaching for heaven. Now I wondered if she was just reaching for more than she deserved. You can't raise somebody's conscience for them, I whispered to the empty house. You can only raise them right and hope it sticks. That line hung in the air, heavy but honest. I folded the lawyer's letter one last time, slipped it into a clean envelope, and tucked it into my purse. Then I picked up the phone and called Marjorie, my friend from church, the one who always kept her ear to the ground and her heart in the right place. She picked up on the second ring. "Morning, Gloria. You sound like you've been up all night." I let out a breath. "That's 'cause I have. It's about Jasmine." Marjorie went quiet. She knew better than to interrupt me when my voice took that tone. So I told her everything. The forged papers, the fake signature, the bank calls, the lies that stacked up like bad debt. When I finished, I heard her sigh through the receiver. "Lord have mercy." Then, sharper, "You want me to pull her name through county filings? See what else she's done?" "Yes," I said softly. "And Marge, don't mention this to nobody. Not yet, baby," she said, her voice thick with loyalty. I wouldn't breathe it to my own shadow. That made me smile. The first real one I'd had in days. Thank you. After we hung up, I stepped out onto the porch. The morning air smelled like wet earth and magnolias, sweet and dangerous. The kind of scent that tells you something's about to bloom or burn down by the curb. Jasmine's car sat crooked like it always did. She hadn't come by since our last talk. The silence between us felt louder than thunder. I sat for a while, rocking slow, listening to that quiet neighborhood wake up. Kids yelling, dogs barking, sprinklers hissing. Life moved on, but my world was still standing still. Then I whispered, "Not for long." By noon, I was in my car, driving downtown to the lawyer's office. Mr. Jacobs looked startled when I walked in without an appointment. "Mrs. Davis," he said, jumping to his feet. "We didn't have you scheduled today." "I didn't come for no appointment," I said, my voice steady as that ticking clock back home. "I came for the truth." He blinked, flustered. "Of course, ma'am. Please, sit." I didn't. I handed him the letter Jasmine had forged and watched his face turn pale. "She told you I signed that?" I asked. "She assured me you had approved everything," he stammered. "I didn't realize. She assured you wrong." I cut in. He rubbed his temples. "Mrs. Davis, I am truly sorry. You'll need to file an affidavit of forgery. Once we process it, her access will be fully revoked." I nodded. "Do it." He hesitated. "It may cause a family dispute, sir," I said quietly. "That dispute already started when my own child stopped telling the truth." He didn't argue after that. When I signed the real papers this time, my hand didn't shake. The pen glided smooth and sure, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I felt my spine straighten. My true name looked strong again in ink. When I stepped outside, the heat hit me like a wall, bright and cleansing. I closed my eyes and said under my breath, "One step at a time." That evening, I sat back on my porch with a glass of sweet tea, letting the cicadas hum their song. Across the street, a car slowed, then stopped. Jasmine. She got out slow, clutching her purse like it might shield her. Her eyes were red, face drawn. When she walked up the porch steps, I didn't move. "Mama," she said softly, "can we talk?" I looked straight ahead. "You can sit." She did, twisting her fingers in her lap. The silence between us stretched long enough to make her squirm. "Finally," she said, "I went too far. I was scared. I didn't think you'd help me." I turned my eyes toward the sunset, red, fierce, fading behind the trees. "You could have come to me, Jasmine. You could have said the truth. But instead, you made me your fool." Her voice broke. "I'm sorry, Mama. I'll fix it." I shook my head slowly. "Baby, you can't fix what's been broken, but you can start by owning it." She covered her face with both hands, sobbing. "I'll do whatever you say." We sat there a long while, neither speaking. The air grew thick with evening heat, the sound of crickets creeping in. Inside, the old clock ticked faintly, steady as ever. This time, though, I didn't dread it. That clock had judged me once, but now it was keeping time for my strength. I took a slow breath. "I love you, Jasmine," I said quietly, "but love don't mean blind. You're my daughter, but you're grown now, so you're gonna face what you did. You hear me?" Her shoulders shook. "Yes, ma'am." "Good." I stood, setting my glass down on the railing. "You took from me, but I'm taking back my peace." As I walked back inside, the last light of day spilled across the floor. Warm, golden, unyielding. Somewhere in the house, the clock kept ticking. But this time, It didn't sound like guilt, it sounded like freedom. And for the first time in a long while, I smiled, not out of forgiveness, but out of knowing that no matter how deep betrayal runs, a woman who's been broken and still stands, she's unstoppable. Every sound in that house carried a memory. The hum of the fridge, the creak in the hallway floor, even the whisper of the curtains against the open window. All of it spoke of what used to be. Gloria stood there in the early light, robe tied loose, coffee steaming in her hand. The morning sun slid across the walls like forgiveness easing into an old wound. She took a deep breath, let the quiet fill her chest, and said softly to herself, "You still here, Gloria? You still standing?" The words lingered, strong as a hymn. She smiled faintly. "Peace ain't fragile," she whispered. "It stands even when your heart's cracked clean through." That line, it wasn't just something she said. It was something she'd earned. The bitterness that once sat heavy in her chest had faded into something gentler. It didn't mean she forgot, just meant she didn't let it rule her anymore. She walked through the kitchen, the same kitchen where arguments once flared like wildfire. Now it smelled of coffee, lemon polish, and new beginnings. She paused at the dining table, fingers brushing against a small crack in the wood. "Sometimes," she murmured, "love means letting space do the talking." And that's exactly what she'd done. She'd given Jasmine space to learn, to grieve, to grow. And she'd taken her own to breathe. The house felt big without her daughter's laughter, but it also felt honest. Real peace wasn't loud. It didn't have to announce itself. It just was. The rumble of a car outside broke her stillness. She didn't need to look. She already knew. He hesitated at the porch steps, holding his hat in his hands like it was some kind of offering. He looked smaller than she remembered, not in size, but in spirit. "Morning, Gloria," he said, voice low, cautious. She didn't flinch. "Morning, Darren." He nodded, eyes darting to the doorframe. "I didn't come to stir nothin' up, just needed to say something." She leaned against the doorway, arms crossed. "Then say it." He swallowed. "I was wrong. Every way a man can be. I broke something that didn't deserve breakin'. She raised her hand, stopping him gently. "You ain't gotta rehearse guilt for me. I know it when I see it." His eyes dropped to the porch wood. Silence stretched between them like a long road neither wanted to walk. Finally, she said, "You know, I been carryin' plates longer than you been alive." That made him look up, puzzled. "I been servin', mendin', fixin'," she went on. "But I ain't servin' no more pain. Trouble ain't got nothin' new to teach me." The line hit him harder than any shouting could've. He nodded slowly, shame softening into something like respect. "I'm sorry, Gloria." She sighed. "I know, but I don't need your sorry to be whole." He lingered a moment longer, then stepped off that porch, the boards groaning beneath him like an old memory sighing one last time inside. Gloria moved with quiet purpose. She dusted the mantel, rearranged a few photos. Jasmine as a child, her late husband in uniform, her own young face glowing with the kind of hope that still hadn't died. Then she walked into Jasmine's room. The bed was made, untouched since her daughter had left to find her own peace. Gloria sat on the edge, running her hand over the quilt. A few tears slipped free, soft and warm. "Tears ain't weakness," she whispered. "Sometimes they just prove you survived." She let them fall without shame, without hurry. Then she wiped her face, stood, and opened the window wide. The breeze carried in the smell of magnolia and the sound of birds starting fresh. That afternoon, Marjorie dropped by, as she always did, carrying gossip, laughter, and a bag of biscuits. Well, look at you, Marjorie said, squinting playfully. Ain't seen this much calm on your face since prom night. Gloria chuckled, waving her off. Prom night was chaos, and you know it. They sat on the porch, sipping sweet tea and watching the street. Marjorie glanced sideways. So, you gon' forgive him? Gloria didn't answer right away. She looked at the sky, soft orange now with the coming sunset. Forgiveness ain't a doorway, she said finally. It's a hallway. And baby, I'm still walkin'. Marjorie nodded slowly, smiling with that deep understanding only time gives. They sat in the kind of silence that wasn't heavy, just true. The kind that meant peace had finally come home as dusk settled. Gloria rocked gently on her porch chair, the wood creaking like an old song. She looked toward the camera of her own thoughts. That invisible audience she'd been telling this whole story to. Her lips curved into a small, knowing smile. Now, if this story found you tonight, she began softly, her voice low and warm. Don't you go nowhere. Like, subscribe, and share this one with somebody who might need it. She chuckled. And drop your birth year in them comments. If we close in age, I got a little something I want to tell you. She leaned back, letting the rhythm of her chair and the chorus of cicadas close the night. Peace got a backbone, she whispered again. And baby, so do I. The camera would fade to black right there. The sound of that steady rocking chair becoming her heartbeat. Strong, steady, unbroken. The evening rain came slow, like the sky itself was trying to rinse away what was left of the past. Gloria sat by the window, watching drops trail down the glass, each one catching a sliver of light before it disappeared. The house had a stillness she hadn't felt in years, not the kind born from loneliness, but the kind that meant peace had finally taken its seat. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She didn't rush to answer. She just let it hum for a moment, sipping her tea before finally picking it up. Hey, Mama. It was Jasmine. Her daughter's voice carried a tremble, the kind that hides behind strength. Hey, baby. Gloria said softly, leaning back into her chair. You sound tired. I been thinkin', Jasmine said after a pause. About everything. About how I let that man twist my head. How I hurt you. Gloria closed her eyes. The sound of her daughter's guilt broke her heart in the gentlest way. Baby, you don't owe me an apology, Gloria said. You owed yourself some truth. And you found it. That's what matters. I don't know if I deserve forgiveness, Jasmine whispered. Gloria smiled faintly, tracing her fingertip against the rim of her teacup. Forgiveness ain't something you earn, sweetheart. It's something you walk toward. And I've already started walkin'. The silence on the other end stretched long. But it wasn't awkward. It was healing. A bridge being rebuilt without either of them realizing it. 2 days later, the sun came up like it meant it. Bright, steady, without apology. Jasmine's car pulled into the driveway around noon. She stepped out, hesitant, holding a bouquet of yellow tulips. Her eyes were red, but her shoulders were straight. Gloria opened the door before Jasmine even knocked. You didn't have to bring nothin' but yourself, she said with a smile. I needed to. Jasmine replied, holding out the flowers. Tulips mean renewal. I read that somewhere. Gloria took them, nodding slowly. Well, I'll take renewal any day. They moved into the kitchen, arranging the flowers in a glass jar that had once held pickles. Neither said much. They didn't need to. Sometimes healing don't sound like words. It sounds like two people standing side by side, breathing the same air again. Later that afternoon, Jasmine followed Gloria to the backyard. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and magnolia blossoms. Gloria knelt by her garden bed, tugging out a few weeds. "You still keepin' Daddy's roses alive?" Jasmine said quietly. Gloria nodded. "Something's worth the work." Jasmine watched her for a long moment. "Mama, did you ever stop loving him?" "Daddy, I mean." Gloria didn't answer right away. She pressed her hand into the soil, grounding herself before speaking. "Love don't just vanish, baby. It shifts. It changes shape. The love I had for your daddy, it became something else. Respect for what we shared, gratitude for what he gave me. But love, that deep, breakin' kind, no, I don't carry that no more." Jasmine nodded slowly, tears pooling in her eyes. "I want that kind of strength." Gloria smiled, small but proud. "You already got it. Took me years to find peace. You found it younger than I did. That's your blessing." That evening, they sat on the porch together, mother and daughter, with the city lights flickering in the distance like tiny promises. Marjorie pulled up, of course. That woman never missed a quiet moment to shake it up. "Well, look at this," she said, stepping onto the porch. "Two queens sittin' out here lookin' like an album cover for peace itself." Gloria laughed. "Girl, you ever think about mindin' your business?" "Never," Marjorie said, plopping herself down with a grin. "So, Jasmine, you stayin' this time, or you just visitin'?" Jasmine smiled softly. "I'm taking it one day at a time, Miss Marjorie." "That's grown talk right there," Marjorie said, fanning herself. "See, y'all both done learned something. Pain'll teach you more than any preacher." The three women sat there as the sky turned lavender and the crickets tuned up for their nightly song. As the evening deepened, Gloria found herself looking out toward the horizon, not with longing anymore, but with peace. She turned to Jasmine and said, "You know, baby, peace got a price. Folks think it's just calm days and quiet nights. But no, peace costs honesty. It costs pride. Sometimes it costs people you thought would never leave." Jasmine nodded, her eyes glistening. "Was it worth it?" Gloria smiled. "Every tear, every lonely night, every truth I had to swallow, 'cause peace. Peace got a backbone, and now I know mine does too." The porch light flickered on, wrapping them all in a soft glow. Jasmine leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. "Thank you for not giving up on me." Gloria kissed the top of her head. "That's what mothers do, baby. We bend, we break, but we don't quit." As the night settled in and the crickets grew louder, Gloria looked out once more, her voice low, rich, and full of meaning. "If this story found you tonight," she said softly, her eyes warm, her tone steady, "take a breath. Don't rush forgiveness. Don't rush healing. But if it spoke to your heart, like, subscribe, and share it with somebody who needs to hear they can rise again too." She smiled, slow and sure. "Drop your birth year in the comments. I want to see how many of y'all still believe peace can come after the storm." The camera would linger on that smile, that quiet strength, then fade to the sound of the rocking chair again, slow, steady, and free. Because Gloria wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living proof that peace, real peace, always comes with a backbone. The morning light came soft through the lace curtains, settling on Gloria's living room like it had always belonged there. For the first time in months, the house didn't feel heavy. It breathed with her, slow, peaceful, alive. She was humming to herself, folding laundry on the couch when a firm knock sounded at the door. It wasn't Jasmine. She knew that rhythm. Two short, one long. This one was different, hesitant, careful. When she opened the door, There stood Darren, the man who had once stood between her and her daughter's trust. His suit was rumpled, his eyes shadowed, and his confidence, that slick, smooth arrogance, was gone. "Miss Gloria," he started, voice low, almost trembling. I know I don't have no right to be here." Gloria crossed her arms, studying him. The air between them was tight with all that had been said, and all that hadn't. "You sure don't," she said evenly. "But since you're already on my porch, say what you came to say." Darren swallowed hard, glancing at the steps before meeting her eyes again. "I came to apologize. For Jasmine, for you, for myself, I guess. I ain't the man I thought I was." Gloria tilted her head. "No, baby, you never were. You were the man you thought you could get away with being." He flinched at that, not because she shouted, but because she didn't. Her calm hit harder than anger ever could. He nodded slowly. "You right. I did Jasmine wrong. Used her when she was already hurtin'. I seen what that did to her. She ain't the same no more." Gloria's eyes softened a little, though her stance stayed strong. People change when life breaks them open. Sometimes that's the only way light gets in. Darren shifted, nervous, fumbling with the brim of his hat. "I lost my job last month. Ain't nobody returnin' my calls. Guess karma came to collect." Gloria sighed. "Karma don't collect, baby. It teaches. Question is, you learnin'?" He looked down, voice barely a whisper. "Tryin' to." "Well," she said, stepping onto the porch beside him, "tryin' is how you start. Ain't no man or woman wakes up holy. We just wake up hopin' to do better than we did yesterday." He nodded, silent, and for the first time, his shoulders eased. Not from relief, but release inside. Jasmine's voice floated down the hallway. "Mama, who was that?" Gloria turned. Somebody who needed to say goodbye. Jasmine walked into the living room, drying her hands on a dish towel. When she saw Darren standing on the porch, her breath caught. "Darren." He turned, eyes wide, shame written all over him. "Hey, Jas." For a moment, the only sound was the wind pushing through the oak trees. Then Jasmine stepped forward, calm but firm. "You hurt me," she said simply. "You took my trust, my peace, and twisted it. But I'm not holdin' that no more." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I don't expect you to forgive me." Jasmine looked at her mama, then back at him. "Forgivin' you ain't for you. It's for me." She opened the screen door and handed him a small folded note. "That's the number of a counselor at the church downtown. Tell her Jasmine sent you. She'll listen." Darren took it with shaking hands. "You really mean that?" "I do," she said, her voice steady. "But you don't come back here again. Not to this porch. Not to me. You take this second chance and make it mean something." He nodded, tears sliding down his face. "I will. I promise." After he left, the house felt lighter again. Not because he was gone, but because something unspoken had finally been released. Jasmine sat beside her mama on the couch, quiet for a long moment. Gloria finally said, "You handled that like a woman who's learned something." Jasmine smiled faintly. "Guess I had a good teacher." Gloria chuckled, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "Girl, I just been teaching you how to stand on your own 2 feet. But this right here, that came from you." Jasmine looked down at her lap, eyes glistening. "You think forgiveness ever runs out, Mama?" Gloria shook her head slowly. "No, baby. Forgiveness don't run out, but access does. You can forgive somebody and still close the door. That's how peace stays safe." They sat there in silence, the afternoon light pouring over them both. Outside, The world kept turning, cars passing, birds singing, children laughing somewhere down the block. But inside that little house in Atlanta, time felt gentle again. Later that evening, Marjorie showed up, carrying a peach cobbler. "I heard y'all had company," she said, setting the dish on the table. "Figured you might need something sweet to balance all that bitterness." Gloria laughed. "Girl, how you always know when to pop up." Marjorie shrugged. "Spirit told me." They ate together, laughing soft, sipping sweet tea. The day fading into an orange-pink dusk, Jasmine looked between her mama and Marjorie, realizing how sacred ordinary moments could be. As the sky darkened, Gloria stepped out on the porch again, rocking slowly in her chair. The air smelled of peaches and rain. Jasmine joined her, resting her head on Gloria's shoulder. "Feels different tonight," Jasmine whispered. Gloria nodded. "'Cause it is, baby. Today, we buried the last of what hurt us." Jasmine sighed, peaceful. "I didn't know forgiveness could feel like freedom." Gloria smiled. "That's 'cause folks confuse forgiveness with weakness. But real forgiveness? It's strength in its softest form." The porch light flickered once, then held steady. Gloria looked out toward the quiet street and said, almost to herself, "We done learn the hardest lessons: love, loss, and letting go. Now all that's left is livin'." The night hummed around them, no thunder, no ticking clock, just peace, stretched wide enough to hold them both. The peace in that little Atlanta house did not last long. It never does when old lies are still crawling under the floorboards. It was a Thursday afternoon, hot enough to make the porch boards sigh. Gloria was shelling peas into a bowl when her phone started ringing on the kitchen counter. She almost ignored it, thinking it was another call from one of those fake charity people, but then she saw the name flash across the screen. Mr. Franklin, her lawyer, the same one who had sent that message weeks ago, the one that started everything. Her stomach tightened, but she answered anyway. "Afternoon, Mr. Franklin." "Mrs. Harris," he said, voice low. "I need to speak with you in person. It's about Jasmine." The bowl of peas slipped from her lap, rolling across the floor. "About Jasmine? Lord, what now?" He hesitated. "I'll explain when I get there." "Come on then," she said, already standing. "I'll put the kettle on." When she hung up, the silence in that house turned heavy again, like the air before a storm. Mr. Franklin arrived 20 minutes later, his face more lined than she remembered. He took off his hat, wiped his brow, and stepped inside. "Mrs. Harris," he began, "I thought we had seen the worst of this situation, but something came across my desk yesterday that complicates things." Gloria motioned for him to sit. "You best say it plain now. I done had enough mystery for a lifetime." He laid a thick envelope on the table. This came from the county clerk's office. Turns out, the house deed wasn't the only thing altered. There was also a separate document, power of attorney, signed 3 months before Jasmine brought Doran into your life. Gloria frowned. "Power of attorney? For what?" "For your savings," he said softly. "And your pension." The words hit her chest like a brick. "You tellin' me my own daughter gave herself access to my money? Before I even knew she was." She stopped herself. The tremor in her voice told the rest. Franklin nodded sadly. "It was legally drawn up but forged. Same signature pattern as before. Doran might have handled the papers, but it was Jasmine's handwriting on the authorization line." Gloria stared at the envelope like it was something alive, something venomous. "How much?" she asked, her voice steady but cold. He hesitated again. "Over $40,000. Gloria sat back in her chair, her body suddenly heavy. That girl took my retirement. I'm afraid so, Mr. Franklin said. I thought you should hear it from me before the investigators come asking questions. They're building a case against Darren, but Jasmine's name is listed too. Her hands trembled as she reached for the teacup. She set it down before it could shatter. Lord have mercy, my baby girl. Mr. Franklin sighed, folding his hat in his hands. I wish there was an easier way to say it. But Mrs. Harris, you deserve the truth. After he left, the house was quiet again, but not the kind of quiet that comforts. It was the kind that swallows sound, the kind that makes you aware of every heartbeat. Gloria walked through each room slowly, like she was seeing her home for the first time. The pictures on the wall, the Bible on the table, Jasmine's high school diploma in its little gold frame. Every memory had a crack running through it now. In Jasmine's old room, she found a half-open drawer. Inside was an old jewelry box she hadn't seen in years. When she opened it, she saw folded receipts, letters, even a small bank slip. Jasmine's name, her signature, money withdrawn from accounts. Gloria never gave her permission to touch. The evidence was all right there, truth sitting still. Quiet, undeniable. Gloria closed the box gently. Lord, she whispered, what kind of storm did I raise under my own roof? By sunset, Jasmine came through the door, humming to herself, carrying takeout bags like it was any other night. Hey, Mama, I brought you that lemon chicken you like. Gloria didn't move. She was sitting at the kitchen table with the envelope open in front of her. Jasmine froze when she saw it. What's that? You tell me, Gloria said quietly. It got your name written all over it. Jasmine's voice shook. Mama, please, I can explain. Don't, Gloria interrupted. Not this time. You've been explainin' for months. I sat in this house, believing your words while you was signin' my name. $40,000, Jasmine. My whole life's work. Tears filled Jasmine's eyes. Mama, Darren made me. I didn't. Stop. Gloria's voice was sharp now, the air trembling with it. He didn't make you take my money. He didn't make you forge my hand. That was you, baby. You. Jasmine sobbed, collapsing into the nearest chair. I thought I was fixin' things. Darren said it was just temporary, that once you what? Gloria said, took everything I had and left me to rot. You call that fixin'? Jasmine covered her face, shaking. I was scared, Mama. I didn't know how to stop. Gloria looked at her daughter for a long time, her eyes full of something deeper than anger, disappointment, sorrow, maybe even mourning. You remember when you were a little girl, and you asked me why lies hurt so bad. I told you because they don't die easy. They live in the spaces between people till they eat all the love out of it. Jasmine lifted her head, tears streaking her cheeks. So what now? Gloria took a deep breath, steady and calm. Now, we live with what's left. You done made your choices. I can't unmake them for you, but I can protect what's still mine. Jasmine reached out, her voice small. Mama, please don't turn your back on me. Gloria shook her head. I ain't turnin' my back, baby. I'm just steppin' out the way of your lessons. Some things a mother can't fix. She stood, gathered the papers, and placed them in a folder. Tomorrow, I'm meetin' with the investigators. You do what you gotta do, but I won't lie for you. Jasmine broke down again, head in her hands. Gloria turned off the kitchen light and walked to her room, her steps slow but sure. She felt no rage now, just clarity, the kind that comes when every mask has been removed. That night, rain began to fall outside, soft at first, then steady. Gloria sat by her window, listening to it drum against the glass. It sounded almost like a heartbeat. She whispered to herself, "Truth don't just hurt, it cleans." And somewhere deep inside her, she felt something break open, and something else begin to heal. But the storm was not over yet. The next morning would bring the knock that changed everything again. The wind that morning was low and patient, brushing through the curtains like it knew every scar that house had ever held. Gloria sat in her kitchen again, same chair, same sunlight, but everything felt different. The silence didn't echo anymore. It hummed. It was alive. Her hand rested on her coffee mug, the one with the chipped edge. She smiled at it. "Guess we both got a few cracks, huh?" she murmured. The old radio on the counter hissed before settling into a gospel hum. One of those songs her mama used to play when she didn't have words for her pain. Across the table, a letter lay open. Jasmine's handwriting round, careful, full of love she couldn't always say out loud. "Mama, I'm doing okay. I see now how strong you are. You didn't just survive, you built a peace I didn't even know existed. Thank you for letting me go without guilt. Thank you for teaching me what love looks like when it stands tall." Gloria blinked slow. "The way you do when your heart wants to cry but your soul just wants to breathe." She folded the letter, pressed it to her chest, and whispered, "That's my baby." Outside, a car horn blared. Marjorie, of course. She always honked like she owned the whole street. Gloria laughed, shook her head, and called out, "I'm comin', woman. Don't wake the whole of Atlanta." Marjorie's voice floated in from the porch. "Too late. The Lord's already up, so y'all might as well be too." Gloria grabbed her sweater and stepped out, the air cool and sweet. The two women sat side by side again, just like they used to, feet on the porch rail, hearts open. Marjorie squinted toward the horizon. "You know, you got that glow again. The one you used to have when you'd come home hummin' after choir rehearsal." Gloria chuckled. "That's 'cause I stopped singin' to survive and started singin' 'cause I'm free." Marjorie smiled wide. "Well, hallelujah to that." They sat in that quiet for a while. The morning moved slow. The neighborhood stirred. A boy rode by on his bike, music blaring, a mix of gospel and hip-hop. Gloria couldn't help but sway a little in her seat. "You think you'll ever talk to him again?" Marjorie asked softly. Gloria took a long sip of coffee before answering. "Maybe, but it won't be the same conversation. It'll be two grown folks, not a wounded woman and a scared man. I don't hate him, Marge. I just don't owe him my peace anymore." Marjorie nodded, lips pressed tight in agreement. "Peace is expensive, sis. You paid in full." They laughed, and the sound rolled out across the porch like healing itself had come home. Later that afternoon, Gloria went for a walk down by the lake where she used to meet Darren back when they were young and fearless. The water was still, sky mirrored in it. She picked up a smooth stone, held it in her palm, and said softly, "This one's for the girl who stayed too long. And this one," she tossed another, "for the woman who finally walked away." The ripples spread out, touching everything in sight. She stood there a while, arms folded, wind moving through her curls. The reflection in the water wasn't the same woman from before. This one carried grace in her bones. She'd learned forgiveness wasn't about letting someone else off the hook, it was about putting down the rope that kept you tied to the hurt. As she turned back toward home, a group of young women were setting up for a small picnic under the oak trees. They were laughing, loud and free, playing R&B from a Bluetooth speaker. One of them waved. "Hey, Miss Gloria, you wanna join us?" She grinned. "Maybe later, baby. I'm just taking my piece for a walk." They all laughed, and one shouted, You always say something wise. Gloria winked. Comes with age and a whole lot of mistakes. Sugar. By sunset, she was back on her porch. Notebook open on her lap. Inside it, page after page of her handwriting stories. Prayers, recipes, lessons. At the top of the new page, she wrote in neat, proud letters, the sound of forgiveness. Then she leaned back, her voice low, warm, steady. You know, forgiveness ain't just something you give, it's something you live. It's the way your heart beats when it finally stops running. It's laughing again, singing again, breathing again. She looked out toward the fading light. And if this story found you tonight, baby, don't you forget peace ain't fragile. It stands even when your heart's cracked clean through. She paused, smiled into the hush of evening. If this story touched you, please like, subscribe, and share it forward. Somebody out there might need the reminder that they're still standing, too. The crickets started their song. The porch light flicked on. Gloria closed her notebook, whispering one last time, forgiveness ain't a doorway, it's a hallway. And baby, I'm still walking. And with that, the screen faded to black, soft music rising, the sound of her humming drifting into the night.